I'd like to call the December 20th, 2022 Finance Committee meeting into session at 7 p.m. This is a Zoom meeting being held virtually, and we have a quorum. So with that, agenda tonight is fairly short. We have a finance director, budget, and capital update, followed by public input, member updates, previous meeting minutes, and anticipated adjournment around 8 tonight. Primarily this is to kind of follow up on the briefing that we had last night at the select board meeting and allow for finance committee to have some additional discussion around the update that Alicia and Anthony are going to give us at the start. So with that, but toss over to you, Alicia. Like I said, prior. Feel free to go through the presentation you had, last night for the select board. But since it's the same four of us here, we can kind of blow through that if you want and jump right into the
absolutely
the details.
Yes, and I'll be joined by the town administrator Anthony to really dig in with me on this. It was a group effort, so one second. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so this screen is showing the capital request for fiscal year 24 at 9.5 million, with our capital funding of 1.7 million available, showing a $7.8 million shortfall. Here we're showing the fiscal year 24 budget as submitted by all departments with almost a $1.7 million shortfall. And instead of going through all the details, like we did slide by slide, it may make more sense for us. I think Anthony had a slide up, actually an Excel sheet of the capital projects that we did approve. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And Anthony, if you could share that screen. So in blue is what was submitted, and in green is what Anthony and I recommended to be funded, which brought us to the 1.7 million. And here are the details to each of the projects that we propose for funding. Are there any specific questions by the finance committee on our proposed funding?
Did you want to go through each one, or are you?
If they want, do you mind if I let Anthony go through each one?
Yeah, I think it would be great to talk through it quick. A lot of them speak for themselves, but yeah, I think it's worth the 5 minutes it'll take.
Okay, so the cemetery department, the 3 requests that he put in: cemetery truck replacement, historic gravestone preservation, administrative building needs assessment. We did not recommend the cemetery truck replacement. We just didn't have enough information as far as the year, what the issues were with the truck, so we delayed that off for a year. We did recommend the historic grave preservation, but we recommended that being funded through grants. There's 2 grant opportunities, one being the Mass Historical Grant, and then they could always apply for CPC funding and have that as a project. The third item, the administrative building needs assessment, we recommend that funding, but we recommend that being funded through the Perpetual Care Trust Fund. Under DPW, he had 5 different projects: a zero turn mower. We did not recommend that one. We spoke to Steve Yonley, and we were okay pushing that off for a year to 2. 2024 Ford Explorer or SUV. We did recommend funding that at $50,000. And we are talking about the hybrid or even going an electric vehicle like the F-150 Lightning. The DPW feasibility study, while we agree that it's important and that we would like to do something with that, we think that internal discussions need to be had with LDLWD, considering we share a building. So,
right.
We could have those discussions, and then, quite honestly, we're going through some old capital projects, and I'm going to be reallocating some other space needs money to just one capital project so we can better track that. And we if he's ready, we could fund that out of that bucket. So
Yeah. Anthony, on that one too, I mean, getting input from the facilities director once we fill that would probably be an important part of that too, right?
exactly, right, exactly.
Now,
Yeah, go ahead,
excuse
Fred.
me, the DPW facility was being discussed at the PMBC meeting the other night. And I didn't know whether you and the DPW manager are in sync on this, or whether he's moving along or trying to move along, or what's happening there.
Yeah, no, Steve told me, and he had asked Steve more if he could just kind of have a discussion. Steve said, I'd give you, 5 minutes to make your pitch. So we knew that we just wanted to put it on the radar that at some point we need to address that too. So yes, we're on the same page, and
Good.
We're on the same page with that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The infield groomer, we did not, after discussing with him, we did not recommend funding for that. We do have a spare that just does the beach. It still works just fine, and the new one is only like 6 or 7 years old, and the life expectancy of those is 10. So we'd like to push that out to get towards the end of the life expectancy, and then we'll get rid of the old one, and then we'll have a 10-year in reserve that'll do the beach. So that will come down in another future capital project down the road. And then what he didn't ask for the irrigation wells, he had those pushed out to next year. We felt it was important to get them going this year because it's, in looking at that, it's probably a 7-year payback for those, and the water bills are going through the roof for us, and just keeping the common watered and keeping green and the fields at the high school. So we'd like to get those wells, and including corporate too, we'd like to get those wells going for this fiscal year and start saving some money. And the fight.
Yeah, on the ROI for that, Anthony, I assume the water rates are going to go up significantly once the treatment plant is online. So, it may not be 7 years, it may be something less, if you're able to get what the expected rates are, from the water department. Just because I would imagine that the rates are going to go up significantly, plus having a debt service fee plugged on to
Right.
So if you're looking at a payback, you might want to, have that discussion with them, because it might actually enhance your payback. That's all.
Yeah, good point, Fred, because I think Alicia accounted for a 10% increase in talking to the water department this year alone. So you're right. That's 7 years off of last year's numbers. So it is probably, we might be able to knock off a year on that, maybe even 2, depending on, you're right,
Okay.
on when that comes up. Yep.
Fred,
Good.
when you're talking about the treatment plant, you're talking about the PFAB?
PFAS.
Yeah, okay.
On the wells too, is that the total cost, or is that just an initial?
It's just an initial, Jerry. We'll start with doing whatever we can with that money, and then we'll just expand and expand and expand. Eventually, we'd like to see everything that we're watering be from wells.
Thank you.
All right. So on the fire department, he requested 2 items: a fire prevention officer vehicle and a new ambulance replacement for M1. So after speaking to the chief, we did not recommend the fire prevention officer vehicle. We recommend pushing that off for a year or 2. We did recommend replacing the ambulance, really for the simple fact that even though we just bought one, it's going to take 2 years if we place the order in July for that. So And that's why we're recommending that be funded from borrowing or a ban article, because like I said last night, the intention is to, ban that over for a couple of years until we actually get the ambulance. And in that time, we should have enough, or hopefully we have enough money in the retained earnings to just pay for that ambulance off completely and not even need to ban.
And how old is the ambulance that we're replacing?
I don't have that in front of me.
Okay, that's all right. We can ask that at the Super Saturday.
Okay. All right. So for LCTV, he has a couple of requests that he put in, and he asked that coming from his PEG funds. So we agree to do those and to pay for it out of the PEG cable funds. The planning department, some zoning bylaw, diagnostic and recodification. We recommended funding that, but we from free cash. So yeah. The police department, he has 3 items. The camera and security system. He got a little better quote from his original $250 and $250,000, and we have now $200,000 that we allocated, and we recommend free cash on that. Cruiser replacement plan, we recommended funding on that, free cash. Tasers, he's looking to replace his tasers. Tasers are only good for 5 years, then you have to get them. So he worked out a program with the company where we'll lease them for 5 years, and that'll include the training. So we took this out of the capital and put it into the operating budget for the police department. So that'll be $10,409 for 5 years.
Anthony, on the security system, you said free cash, but it has bond here. Is that correct?
He said bond. The green is
But you
what we
said free
recommend.
cash? Okay.
Yeah, it's free cash. We're going to go free cash on that. Yeah, the blue is what department head thought, and then green is what we thought.
Okay.
So Parks and Rec, they had a number of things listed, starting with the sailboats. They wanted to have that funded from free cash. We recommend the revolving fund on that. I'm just going to skip over the community center pool, Long Lake Dock, and Newfield Creation. We didn't recommend any of those, and we delay the replacement of the dock for a year or two, and in probably a year or two, we'll be recommending again to look at the revolving fund instead of free cash on that.
Before we move on, so I understand that the 2.9 mil for the community center with pool is gone, but we're spending more than we are proposing to spend more than that to buy Indian Hill. For basically, as I understand it now, that same purpose, right?
Yeah, Brian, I don't know where she came up with $2.9 million for a community center with a pool. I think that she may have been thinking Indian Hill at the time, and we didn't have a dollar amount on that. So I think that was just her best guess estimate on that.
Okay, but again, I'm going to use this as the opportunity to say my piece about this.
Well, we're gonna get down to Indian Hill. So do you want to? I know that's
all right.
something that you want to talk about, and I'm happy to talk about it. But
all right, fair enough.
All right. So let's see. The Ford. She's replacing a Ford 2011 Ford Ranger pickup truck. So what we're recommending on that is Ed has old 2 police cruisers, the SUVs. So I talked to both departments, and we talked about having a fleet truck that would be used by town hall. The building department would use it 10-to-1 daily, and then Parks and Rec would use it for the remaining time. And some of the time that they use it is nights and weekends and so forth. So we think that will work. And again, we're recommending an electric vehicle to save money on gas. And we're recommending that from the general fund as well. Resurfacing the basketball courts at 300 King Street. We recommend delaying that for a year or two.
Anthony, on electric vehicles, is the plan to use those existing chargers that are up kind of by the old library? Is that?
Yeah, so we're putting in, we have a grant, so eventually there'll be 4 back there and 2 in the front charging. So,
Okay.
And then, you know, we'll look for more grants to add more, because as more and more electric vehicles come online, you know, we're gonna have to have them in places like our schools and so forth, for when staff is using them, that we can charge vehicles there, so.
Thanks.
All right, and going to the schools, so I'll go right down the list. The concrete sidewalks, the schools requested $71,000. We agreed and went with that. The DPW has always kind of been involved with that, at least my experience in the past. And we recommend that DPW get involved again. I'm going to skip down to the high school roof for right now. The HVAC unit I'll start with. So they wanted $275,000. And we're recommending the $275,000 for that as well from free cash. Now, the high school roof, they requested $4 million. We recommend $50,000 for a feasibility study. And the reason why we don't recommend $4 million, because Mass General Law, Chapter 149 states before you go out, it's design, bid, build. So we have to get the design and engineering costs, and that's what that $50,000 is. So hopefully that, and with the facilities person, that we can get a better understanding of where we sit with that roof. If there's, you know, some temporary patches that we could put in to hold this off until it's eligible for an MSBA project, that would be desirable, because the MSBA pays about 50% of that. So we would only pay $2 million, and MSBA and the state would pick up the other 2. So we'll start with this feasibility study on that.
Excuse me, Anthony, this is another project that PMBC has on their radar. They were actually talking about it in their last meeting. So again, I assume you and Steve Moore and Steve Mark are sort of talking here. So there is some kind of agreement as to, you know, how this thing is going to work, because I'd hate to see the schools and PMBCs, you know, move forward, and then you or us get sort of caught in the middle here.
No, we're not. We sat down with the school department, both Kelly and Steve Mark, so they fully know. And
Okay.
they going to PMBC is kind of just putting it on their radar that this is something down the road, which is fine. You know, they did it, DPW did it. We have no problem, and we're aware of that. But before you have a project, you have to have a funding source. So while we're letting them know, we still have to determine what the funding source is for that. And that's the exercise here, and then it would become a PMBC project.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just did, you know, I was bored the other night and listened to PMBC, and lo and behold, those 2 topics came up, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys were sort of together in the loop. That's
yeah, we will jump on a upcoming PMBC meeting to go through some of this with them, to let them know what really is down the pike on some of these projects, if this is ultimately what's going before town meeting in May.
great. Okay, thank you.
So all of the other requests that they had for furniture and floors and library folding wall replacement, I added those all up, and they totaled $165,000. I called it facility improvements, furniture, floors, play structures, etc. And of all those projects, we worked with them and said, you know, we can do $100,000, $100,000 of that. I think that Alicia, is that funding source right? I thought that was going to be free cash. I could be wrong. but
You're correct, Anthony. It's just,
Yeah.
I don't know why there's a 3 there. I noticed that as well.
Yeah, I just noticed that. So I think that's just a typo, but we'll have to check all the calculations in this after to make sure that we're fine. But that's, yeah, so we're recommending $100,000 of all that, and then they can prioritize what projects that they want to do for the schools. And hopefully that would be working with a facilities director and PMBC on that, possibly PMBC. So, and the last thing that we did is we allocated $657,000 towards the acquisition of 36 King Street, which is the Indian Hill property. And that's how we get to that $1.7 million spending of the capital free cash. So Brian, I know that you've been chomping at the bit to talk about Indian Hill. So now is the time.
So the last that I heard, and I realize this information is out of date, but for anyone watching, the last that I heard, and it was actually the first that I'd heard about Indian Hill, was that we were purchasing it to do the senior center. And the idea was that it was going to be cheaper than building and it was going to be done quicker. As of last night, I now seem to understand that we're buying it for Park and Rec, for their community center and space for a pool and so on. Is that actually, I'll just stop right there and just say, is that what we're purchasing it for?
So let's go back. So Indian Hill was looked at for a senior center, and after it was evaluated by the architects and engineers, it was decided that it still would need a significant amount of work that goes into it. So we have been, plus one thing that we never had it. It wasn't even on the market when at that point. It was going to be on the market at some point in time. So the urgency to get a senior center finally built trumped waiting to see what happened with Indian Hill. So that was taken off probably almost 2 years ago, that we moved away from that for that purpose. So now Indian Hill eventually did, the opportunity is now facing us that it's up for sale. And it's a real unique property because it's contiguous with the high school property, which makes it attractive for us in a lot of different ways. So one of the things that the select board we've worked on this year, and you may not have heard us talking about this, is that we put a request for information out about converting Shattuck Street into truly deeply discounted senior housing, which is 40 to 60% of the AMI, which is the area medium income. So, you know, one way or another, that building eventually is going to need work. If we did not convert it to housing, then you have to renovate it and do some work to it to keep it as a town hall, which would be very, very, very expensive because nothing in that building is up to code, not even both elevators. So, so the request for information was out there. We got 3 responses from companies telling us what, and we're going to talk about this in January at some point, and what they could do with town hall to create that deeply discounted senior housing. So if that happens, then we need to replace town hall and these displaced departments. So Indian Hill now offers an opportunity to put some stuff there. It certainly could be a community center where it could be a combination of Parks and Rec maybe on the first floor and the lower level, and the second floor is offices, and we certainly could look at that for the school department, which we're actually going to take a tour on that on Friday with Steve Mark to look at that. So, you know, it's really an opportunity where we could be looking at space and this is available. And at that price, it's priced at about $200 a square foot. Certainly you're right. We can't build at $200 a square foot. Even to renovate, it probably would cost us $300 a square foot if we went complete gut renovation. But in any event, I think it still has to be determined what we would use it for. But certainly, it lends itself very nicely with that big auditorium that they have for Park and Rec, and then for the offices upstairs for the school department. But the decisions have not been made on that.
Okay, that was a much long, thank you. That was a much longer answer than I was expecting. Let me see if I can boil it down. Current Shattuck Street building, although it's housing who it's currently housing acceptably, we would like to do better. And so we want to spend $3 or $4 million to buy some space that we will use in yet to be determined ways.
I think we'll have an idea how we're going to propose for special town meeting. At least have some pretty good ideas.
Okay, I can't say that I love this project. To me, this is borrowing that we can't afford. This is.
Well, we wouldn't propose it if we couldn't afford it. So.
Anthony,
Yeah.
Anthony, I'm going to ask you not to interrupt me after I've let you go on for 5 minutes. My opinion is that we can't afford this. We've talked about our debt level going up, and this is the case where I don't think it's worth increasing our debt level by $4 million for unspecified uses to give Park and Rec and the school department, better office space. That's my position.
Any other questions with the capital plan?
No, I mean, I think it's straightforward, Anthony, right? I mean, I'm sorry, did I step on someone? Was that Alicia or Jerry? I'm sorry, I stepped on you.
Yeah, that's okay. I just had a general question on all these feasibility studies, for all these different things. Is that part of Mass General Law that has to happen, or is that because we don't have a facilities person or department that can do some of those things for us?
It's Mass General Law.
Okay.
And anything over a certain dollar amount, Jerry, you have to go through that process.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, Anthony, Alicia, I mean, one thing I think I would like to see, right? I mean, obviously, what you're presenting is clear, and come the end of the day, it'll be the will of the voters on what they want to do, right? I mean, I think for me and some of the things we talked about on Fincom is just kind of our concern around butting up against our ability to borrow and the lack of flexibility and some of the other things as we continue to head on this road with other things like Shaker hanging out there, right? So I think as part of this process, we really want to hopefully kind of look at the debt ceiling and have some conversations around that, just so, we're making sure we're educating the town on that stuff, right? I mean, we all heard at last town meeting, the consensus that everything's free if it doesn't lead to an override, and we can cram it in there, right? But clearly, as we keep doing more and more of that, we're driven down a road, and we're less flexible on some of the other things like funding the cap plan and staff and all that. It all has a cost and it all offsets. So I just want to make sure we're looking at that and we're educating, we're reminding ourselves and we're educating the select board and those that aren't as familiar with some of the finance stuff and things like that, and the public on the offsets or the other impacts of some of these decisions, right? Because especially with revaluations coming and all that, I mean, I think people are going to be surprised with taxes it is, and this stuff all adds up.
Right. And I'd love to ask Fred, you're usually one of our borrowing hawks. What do you think about this?
Well, I think what I'd like to see is some financial modeling, because we've got what I'm hearing is around an $18 million senior center going in. And if we do this $4 million purchase. It's probably another million or $2 million to make it livable. And then we have a town hall that is getting closer and closer to being vacant, waiting for 550 King Street to come aboard. And somehow we're going to either sell 550 sell Shattuck Street to the developer or swap a building or do something. And even if we swap a building, we're going to have to outfit it, which is going to be, you know, with the fair market wages is going to be, you can't do anything without, you know, million signs on the end. So even before you get anywhere near thinking about Shaker Lane, it sounds like we've got, I don't know, 20 or $25 million worth of debt coming on.
That's the high school roof, 4 million.
And how we're going to fund that. So I, you know, I'd like to see either us try to do that or with the finance team try to, you know, look at, you know, time it out. I have no idea how far out you think, you know, swapping the buildings would be for the new town hall. But that's got to be years out, whether it's 2 years or 4 years or something out, and see what that looks like. Yeah, we do have some debt coming off, but on the other hand, we've got debt coming on. So what does that really look like? And with interest rates going up, you know, the cheese could get more binding pretty quickly. So just, you know, that would be my 2 cents on it. You know, I think that the Indian Hill property is interesting because of its location, if nothing else. And what we do with it, I don't know. You know, that's really up to the selectmen to figure out what selectmen and maybe even the school committee figure out what they want to do with it. But, you know, personally, strictly from a financial standpoint, I would take a hard look at putting the senior center in there. I know we've spent a lot of money already on it, but, you know, we're going to spend a whole hell of a lot more on it. You know, maybe this study has been done and it shows that it really isn't feasible. I don't know. But you buy it for 4 million, you put another 5 million in it. You got it for 9, and we've already sunk a couple million into the project. So you've got 11 or 12, and you save $7 million for the town. Just, you know, back of the envelope, kind of with really nothing to back that up. You know, it may not work, but it just back of the envelope says we ought to at least look at it. And if it's already been looked at, it's already been fleshed out and doesn't work, okay. But I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the numbers. And Indian Hill has been pretty much a black hole from, you know, from the public standpoint, because I literally have been getting phone calls and texts asking what we're doing with Indian Hill. So, and I literally have told them I don't know, because until really very recently, like last night, was the first time we really saw an official document saying that, yep, we want to go buy it. And even when I asked a couple of questions last night, there wasn't a whole hell of a lot said on the selectmen's meeting floor about it. So I think the public, you know, deserves to know what we're going to do, what we're going to use it for, and is this the best use of our money?
Right. And a couple of points I want to tag on to that in that so we had some consultant do a feasibility study. Well, we also had a consultant do a feasibility study that said that the Cooper Farm was the best place for the tennis court, and their feasibility study seemed to include everything except for cost. And so I'm, with that example, and having lived in town for 30 odd years, I am suspicious of feasibility studies that sometimes come up with the answer that you want them to come up with. So I'd like to see the analysis of why Indian Hill doesn't work, as a senior center. And with regard to turning Shattuck Street into housing, just think about it. We have the notion over at King Street on both sides of the road of somewhere about 700 units coming at 550 King Street, and then another bunch of units, maybe I think 125 at the mill building, plus the whole bunch of units that we may end up getting forced to put in by the train station. And so I think any notion that we're going to get some money from Shattuck Street for housing, I think, is swimming against the stream of, maybe 1,500 other units coming on board. So I just got I got a lot of questions about this.
Well, the only issue I would take with that, Brian, is if the proposal is that the Shattuck Street project is truly at a discount for the seniors in need relative to, fair market or whatever that term is, that says if you're not making $60,000 or $70,000, you can't, you can afford it, where people just on Social Security are nowhere near that. And I know a lot of towns, Waltham, Lexington, a whole bunch of towns and cities have turned their old schools into senior housing. And I think that that's not something that we should just toss aside. And I think it's a different financial model for the occupants than any of the apartments will be up at 550 King, or maybe even down at the station.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I think that's a different animal. So I wouldn't just put those together with Shattuck Street. I think Shattuck Street should be looked at on its own.
yeah. Fred, I think it would be very different having, a proportion of a percentage of units affordable versus something that was really purpose built for that, right? I mean, that I think could be the differentiation.
And it comes down to the definition of affordable. I mean,
for sure.
The state's definition of affordable is really kind of a joke for a lot of the seniors. So I think that, before we poo-poo it, I think we really need to understand it.
Anthony, I did have a timing question, right? Just if Indian Hill is going to be on the special, I mean, would that need to be funded as part of the special? And this is kind of more of a placeholder, just so we're already counting for that money being spent next fiscal, or what are we going to have a capital article and similar funding article at the special? Or are we going to kind of go for a letter of intent for that, but push the timing out till?
So the acquisition of 36 King Street would be a warrant article that would be approached a couple of different ways. We would have the money that we're from the capital project, the $697,000 or whatever that number was. I don't have it in front of me again. But then we're also looking at old capital projects for the past 3 years and repurposing those. So I think that there's another opportunity to pick up a couple $100,000 there. So we would have pretty close to $900,000 of cash available to put towards that purchase, and then the remaining would be an authorization to borrow.
Okay. So the borrowing authorization, would that have to be at the special or would that be at?
It's
regular
special.
town meeting?
No, everything's at the special. So the special would
Okay, got
allow us to go forward with the purchase, using the funds and the borrow.
Right.
And
So-
to answer some
okay.
of, yeah, and to answer some of the questions or comments that were made earlier, that the apartments at 550 King Street and 410 Great Road, the zoning calls for 10% affordability. That 10% is, I believe it's 80% of the AMI, which is really, to Fred's point, not affordable to seniors. What Shattuck Street is proposing is the 40 to 60% AMI, which would make it much more affordable to seniors.
So the six, I can't read the number here, the 637 that's on the schedule, is that in the 1.7 or is that incremental to the 1.7 for next year?
It's in the 1.7.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
So I guess, so Fred asked if we could get some projections. Can we make that a formal ask?
We could certainly put together a debt schedule to show what this, where we stand now, what bringing on the senior center looks like, and bringing on 36 King Street would look like. The goal is we wouldn't go out there, we'd ban 36 King for a couple of years until the senior center is done, because that's how long it's going to take to build a senior center and then finally get it to the point where we're opening. So really, it's the intention of going through the same exercise that we went through this year and allocating even more money next year towards. So, we're hoping not to be able to borrow that much of that it states right now, and that would be actually borrowing a lot less, maybe even half less. So that's the goal that we're working towards.
But if we're purchasing it now, don't we have to pay them now?
Well, we borrow the money and then we're banning it. So banning is it's a short-term borrowing.
Right.
So we're just basically paying off, a little bit of the interest for the next year or two until we actually bond it.
Right.
Okay.
And hopefully in the next couple of years, the sewer will come online. And are we covered for the betterments at this point, or do we have to worry about I don't know what the number is, $1 million, $2 million worth of betterments for all the town buildings, or what's happening there? Because I would think that would have to be in the sort of the financial projection over the next several years.
Yeah, Fred, so we don't know, we haven't heard the dollar amount yet for the betterment for the town. We kind of got it unofficial at, I don't know, $1 million, $2 million, somewhere around there. We have $2 million put aside of ARPA money to pay for our betterment. So we believe that we'll have the money to pay for a betterment and then contribute the rest towards the good of the project.
Okay, because I don't think we can borrow for betterments, right?
No, we're not going to have to. We have that money tucked away in the ARPA.
Okay. All right.
The last thing I'll say is that I understand basically using the found money, what's things that didn't get spent in previous articles. Back in the day, we used to talk about, you go in through the cushions of the couch and you can generally find a couple $100,000 in the budget to put on things. And it seems like the notion is all of that found money is going to go towards reducing the cost of the 36 King purchase, which means it won't be available for anything else. So I understand the notion of reducing the borrowing, but it's still triage with money.
Right. Well, yeah, Brian, I think, kind of back to the same thing, right? Free's not free. It's all offsets and decisions around what we're prioritizing over other stuff, right? And I think that's again where sometimes I think we as a board or a town meeting or hopefully by encouraging people to, come in and listen to these conversations more is to help educate people that again, just because it's under the levy doesn't mean there's always a cost to everything we do, right, or a decision around everything that the select board does and we recommend, et cetera, right? If no more anyone else have any other questions on cap, otherwise, I mean, I don't want to drag this too long, but I think we should go through the changes in the operational budget as well, right? I think I had a couple questions on that. I don't think it'll take too long, but just the deltas from what was recommended, just in case anyone has any questions there.
One other thing,
Yeah.
Tyler,
Yeah.
it was mentioned Shaker Lane. When that eventually does happen in 4 years or so, that is absolutely going to have to be a debt exclusion with the price of schools now. That's never going to be able to be put under the levy.
No,
Yeah.
no, I agree. I think, something of that magnitude, but it's just, we've got if the master, I don't want to use the term master plan. If the plan for the Shattuck Street building is 5 years from now, 8 years from now, to be senior housing, then that spins off a couple of other capital projects. It spins off apparently Indian Hill to vacate some space, and then it spins off a building that I don't think a developer can sell us a building that's totally fitted out, right? It's basically maybe a little more than a shell that then we have to spend something to fit out and move into. So that's another couple, 3, 4, 5 million, whatever it is, I don't know. So if we can sort of put a plan around that, saying, in the 5 or 7 years, this is the kind of money we're going to be spending to relocate town hall and eventually end up with quote, truly affordable housing or more affordable housing for some seniors. I think that's a worthwhile presentation that the town deserves to see and hear about, rather than wondering why we're buying Indian Hill.
Right. And I'll just say, in the years between now and when Shaker needs to be redone, we could be taking all that found money we found in all the seat cushions and putting that aside towards it instead. So I think it'd be great to get some more citizen input on this. So, all right.
Yeah, Brian. Yeah, Brian. I mean, I think for me, right, and I think us making sure we're painting that picture, right, so the town understands the decisions they're making and the impact of that, right? I mean, you could step back to the same conversation over and over again, right? The library is free, the senior center is free, etc. Police, fire. I mean, again, we always get to the same place, and come the end of the day, it's they're all great projects and all move the town forward a lot, but I think we just need to continue to be the stewards of what's reasonable and educate people on the things we can and can't do, right? I mean, I think as we have the facilities director come up, I mean, the cap plan, I would imagine, will look very different next year with a lot of requests for, a lot more proactive maintenance, whether that's operational or cap, that just, some of the stuff just kind of gets pushed back. We get to it when it's,
Right. Tyler, I mean, all I'm saying is that I'd love to see I think this is what Fred was asking for as well, is, let's see the 10-year plan of all the projects that we know are coming. And then we can see from that point of view, can we afford everything? And if not, we get to choose what we can and can't afford.
That's a good question, actually, for Alicia. I mean, Alicia, like you last year, you did an awesome job of building out that the 10-year cap plan for the first time in a long time, right? I mean, is that something that has been updated, or we can update as part of the budget process this year, so that we're enrolling some of this new stuff? I mean, I think that was a good starting spot. It's clearly hard to forecast out that far, but I mean, a lot of these big things were in there last year, right? Indian Hill clearly wasn't, but I mean, we already had a 10-year cap plan that had the community center. We had a 10-year cap plan that had, a placeholder for Shaker Lane, I believe, right? And we knew that we had some really, really big gaps, or hills to climb going forward, right? So I think a lot of that work's already been done. It's just updating it, and then I think making it, or talking about ways we need to bring visibility to that, or have the tough conversation or educate, right? But I think a lot of that hard work was done last year because we were all really concerned about it, at that point too, is what this looked like, in years going forward, and how little of that hill we were chipping away at each year, just looking at all the cap priorities.
Yeah, so I've been working with Anthony with that since last year. So what we did was we rolled forward. A lot of those projects came from the departments. We told them to update them for the 10 years again, to prioritize what they wanted that got pushed this year. And then we looked at them again, knowing that they're going to push out some more. So we will have an updated 10-year plan for you to see, just to know that our needs and our money will be shifting from year to year, depending on what we have and the economic climate.
Right, it'll always be fluid, right? And even last year's, and we only got through some of the P1s last year, right? I'm sure this year's P1s may not be the P2s from last year, even with the things moving out. The priorities are definitely going to change every year.
Yeah, but I put notes down too to look into the financial modeling for the group.
Great.
Based on Fred's asks on the projects and how the debt services and the ceiling and the school.
Of the current
Big
projects
notes.
as well?
Say again,
The
Jerry?
current projects of debt that we already have?
Yes,
In
correct.
addition to the okay, perfect.
Good.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right.
Would you like to go into detail on look at the adjustments made to the operating budget?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if you could just kind of pull that up, or I can share if you don't have it handy, Alicia, and I think we should just step through those quick and see if anyone had any questions.
Are you able to see the screen? So
Yeah.
these are some of the adjustments that we made out of the operating budget. So we transferred out that 20,000 tuition reimbursement we'd originally put in the town administrator, and actually put it under the personnel HR budget, and taking it out of the reserve to reduce the budget by 20,000. This 13, I brought down 3. We utilize an intern in our office, and to help offset, I decided to bring that down to 10,000. Treasury salaries went up to move the treasurer collector to step 6, as we've been trying to fill that position. Tax collector, we reduced that line based on spending trends, that they really didn't need that 2,000. They've been spending roughly around 34 each year. And IT was 2 slight changes to their wages for some corrections due to the new schedule. Some people found it a little frustrating, new and are adjusting to the new salary schedule. Software systems and contracts, that went up for the Civic Ready and the new website design implementation that's coming to make it more transparent, more user-friendly website. IT supplies, hardware and software, that went up for more computer hardware and software based on what they've been spending and the needs of the town. Human resources, we took down the part-time admin position they had. We removed it. The personnel reserve fund, that $40,000 reduction is because we made that tuition reimbursement line and that employee recognition line that Gary was talking about, with rewarding employees and trying to keep people as long as we can. Conservation, they wanted to increase their hours for the assistant agent from 19 to 22, and that would have made it a benefit eligible position. So we reduced it back down to the 19 hours.
And they agreed to that?
We told them that's what they were asking us. So we kind of told them, no, we couldn't do it this year with that 1.7 million, just bad timing.
Okay.
Other expense, we added back 250 from land use. So land use had taken all the divisions and put it all into land use. We then took it back out for transparency reasons and put it back within the divisions. So here, when you see a lot of these eliminates, we repurpose back into their, so planning where you see level funded line item. They're kind of just transferring out, like I said, everything that was put in from the divisions in this land use different buckets back into the individual divisions.
Okay, okay.
On the salary, I was curious, Alicia, right? I mean, we heard a lot of talk around division of the land use department and pulling planning in there, right? I feel like that has kind of come back out again, right? So I was a little
Right.
confused, or surprised by that.
So that 101, 100 was listed as Assistant Director of Land Use. And instead, since we have an assistant planner and we have a town planner, it makes more sense for the division to be shown with the town planner salary and the assistant town planner salary along with their expenses versus lumping the town planner as Assistant Director of Land Use under land use.
It doesn't change the reporting structure, but it just, the personnel reporting structure, but it changes the accounting, the visibility of the accounting. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yes, so that you can really see what the planning division is costing the town.
Okay, so the planning 101, 101,000, that's the planner and the assistant planner?
Yes, the Assistant Director of Land Use is the town planner. So what we did is we just took that Assistant Director of Land Use funding and put it in town planner.
Okay, so where is the new unfilled?
Assistant town planner,
Yeah.
it's also in planning division.
Oh, okay, so it's in that 101?
No, it's separate. It's funded separately. This is just showing the cuts. This isn't showing the ad
Okay.
of the assistant. So if I went back up,
Yeah.
apologies. So if I come back up here, well, actually, that's a new one. So let me see.
Right. Yeah, to go down to the budget detail, I think, Alicia, right?
I'm just gonna go back in here for a second. I'm just gonna highlight it. So we have it in the budget is $84,042.
Okay, and that's salary, that's not benefited, right?
That's just salary, yes, and that's just a
Right.
guess because it hasn't been graded yet. That's just a preliminary estimate.
Okay, but when it is graded, assuming it's 84,000, just for discussion, does that include benefits, or is benefits in the other, the big benefits bucket?
In the big benefits bucket.
Okay, fine. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So we go back to where we were in planning. Okay. After planning, we reduced the appeals wages hourly. The staff that was getting that 1,500 it's for additional work, and there was no additional work outside of their working hours. So we took that 1,500 and cut it. We level funded back their postage to 300 that had been originally included in the land use up here. We cut the Magic MAPC services and assessment. We did this based on what they've been spending. So we took 7,000 out from the 12 and brought it down to 5 because that's what's been used every year that we've seen. So we thought that the 7,000 could be cut. Civil preparedness, we eliminated it because it's not used at all. Canine control, I bumped that up. For the health service animal testing, the same person who is the animal control officer also does the health testing on the animals. So to have oversight and have everything, billing and everything together, we added 500 there so that it's not just the canine, but also the animal testing for health.
Mhm.
Crossing guards, there's a light there, so this is no longer needed. So we cut that 5,000.
Yep.
Police, we level funded their overtime line. We cut their uniform allowance. based on the numbers of officers. We reduced their training and education based on their actual spending. Their education also based on actual spending. Radio maintenance, same thing. We looked at the trend. Software expenses, this is just a transfer from the IT department software. Since this is software only used by the police department, it should be in the police budget for transparency.
Hey,
Yes,
Alicia, one question on that one. I mean, I know you probably haven't gone through and gotten through all the different detailed budgets, but I noticed in kind of the detailed breakout by department that was still showing under IT. So you still showed that $32,000 increase under the IT budget.
so that 32, so on the IT budget, if I go back,
Yeah. Well, I think not.
you're not going to see it go down because they increased what they needed, even though I took money out of their budget. They increased their budget for the Civic Ready notification system and that new website design and implementation. So it kind of offset, even though I moved costs
Okay.
out.
So it's just a coincidence that was the exact same amount of. It just caught my eye because it was the exact same amount of 32 that it went up. So okay.
Other supplies we reduced based on their spending trends. This firearm supplies, we took it down by 4,000, but we increased it per the capital plan. They put that 10,409 for the tasers is in here. That's why it looks like it comes out to a 6,409 increase. Subscriptions and memberships, we level funded based on the prior year. Fire, we reduced it by one of their, out of the two requested fire.
Excuse me, Alicia.
Yeah.
The 200,000 that in capital that the police are asking for security and cameras or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, when we put something like that in, there's some kind of a maintenance contract that goes into the operating budget. Is that incremental maintenance in here, or is it offset because this new equipment is new and the old equipment was using a lot of maintenance, or is that anywhere in this scenario?
I would have to ask the chief that question.
Okay.
So I'm going to note
Again,
that down, Fred.
Can I jump in, Alicia, and help you on that?
Sure.
Yep. So Fred, they'll have all the equipment to do everything that they need, including with this system, including storing the data. We have a maintenance plan for cameras, so we didn't bump up the maintenance on that because of the new system. The maintenance should be a wash. Based on new equipment versus old equipment.
Okay, it's just oftentimes the hidden costs are what gets
Right.
you. Okay, thank you.
On the fire, we did fund one fire position that they requested by cutting their overtime wages. He's also going to go for the SAFER grant for up to 4 additional firefighters. He got one already at a special town meeting, another one by us cutting it out of overtime. So that's 2 new positions. We cut the fire EMS call out wages by 5,000 based on spending trends. The same for training and for vehicle repair and maintenance.
So excuse me, just so I understand, the SAFER grant for 4,
Mhm.
if we get it, we already have 2 on board, or is this an incremental 4 to the 2 we already are bringing on?
Anthony, I'm going to ask you to jump in on the SAFER grant, if you don't mind, on what the chief's ideas are now that he's got the 2 additional, if he's going to go for 4 more on top of the 2.
Right.
Oh, I think we may have lost him for a second.
Uh-oh.
Well, then we know what the answer is.
Yeah. He didn't want to answer.
And, you know, I'm channeling Fred here, but it's great to get a grant for 4, but that just means that in a couple of years we're paying for it. And
Right.
did we approve that?
Right. And we were even talking about, I mean, you know, as we were heading into the special, we were talking about concerns for the safer grant funding, you know, funding these heads, right? And that's even before we added them, right? We were talking about that as an incremental thing and concern about the ability to afford it once the grant ran out. So I definitely think, you know, hopefully Anthony can rejoin, but I definitely think this needs to be part of the conversation, really understanding what the costs are next year, the year after, and the plan for that, because 6 heads is one that we're talking about heading into the special, right? I mean, I feel like we're I felt like we were halfway there with adding this head. Now we're potentially going even beyond what was a need.
Right. I mean, I mean, so we're still spending $1/3 on overtime.
Right.
You know, I'm guessing that you can get 4 firefighters for less than $1/3, though I don't know. But I'm guessing that, and that if we got 4 plus 2 more, you know, firefighters, that overtime ought to coast to disappear, or certainly go down a ton.
So that would be something we would need to sit down with the chief. I mean, we cut it down by the 1, but you still they still do have overtime. I'm attributed to the firefighters. So I'm not sure how much it would cut down. I think with the way the revenues are going right now, I would not recommend 4 with the 2. Depends on what is the safer grant, how much is the safer grant, how long are they going to fund it for? Because I think it would be a lot for the town to take on another 4 all at once.
Right. Plus benefits. And I guess that the question I'd ask is, okay, if you're going to bring in 4, what does that expect to do to, you know, overtime? I mean, I remember in years past, our fire chief said, hey, our response time is X minutes. If you give me, and I remember he was incredibly specific, you know, $39,238, I can shave response time by 90 seconds. It's like, wow, okay, you've sold me. I'd love to see the same level of, give me 4 more people and I can cut your overtime in half or something. And the thing is, I think we've asked for this a couple times, and I don't want us to drift into special without having gotten answers.
Well, yeah, Brian, I think it's just, I think understanding what the service level is absolutely a key thing, right? Does it let us staff out of their ambulance? Does it let us, you know, does it fill a need for call firefighters that aren't fulfilling? Is it, you know, making sure there's someone that's sitting at the desk, you know, when they're out on a call? And I just don't understand what it really means as far as service level for the citizens, right?
I'm sympathetic to them. I've got firefighters in my, you know, extended family, so I'm sympathetic. I just want to, you know, we're numbers folks. I want to see the numbers.
Yeah, for sure. My mother's a teacher, my father's a firefighter, so I just have to tread carefully.
My uncle's a firefighter, so I understand.
There you go.
We cut the fire EMS safety professional services to eliminate the expenses related to the ALS intercept. That we didn't feel that was necessary. In travel, we cut 2016 to level fund it, and for him to consider utilizing some of his gift funds. So I sent him a spreadsheet recently with the gift funds he has available to his department. The building department, slight corrections to the wage schedule due to the new schedule that was implemented and voted at special town meeting. We level funded again. You'll see all that where it says level fund line item. That's from us transferring from the land use department back to the individual divisions. We eliminated 4,800 for the other expenses. There was no justification, no reasoning. We didn't understand what that was for, so we took that away. We level funded mileage. I increased the wastewater by 100,000. At first, my estimate was a 5% increase. But they're not sure what their debt service is gonna look like. And so to be conservative, I added another $100,000 on top, not knowing what their debt service is.
So when we say wastewater, this is the
Sewer, our sewer for
Okay,
the town.
okay, so what used to cost us 120,000 is now costing us $500,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
DPW, we brought down the seasonal employee line item as it's difficult to fill those positions, so it wasn't being used. We brought down the overtime just slightly. We level funded it. $50,000 was added in for a new position. We took that away. Roadway, we level funded, so we brought that funding back up. Anthony, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, if you just go back to the wastewater, so
Sure.
I mean, so is that what is that debt? I mean, the sewer doesn't exist yet.
So, correct. But since we're the only user, whatever debt service that they have, we are paying that. We're picking that up. So as they're getting ready, I know they haven't started building it out yet and they're going out to bid. So for operations, the town is still paying for it, plus whatever debt service they're incurring.
Brian,
Well,
don't forget, we bought Montanari's property for, I don't know, $1.5 million bucks or something. There's probably some debt service there. I don't know whether Nick has, added any people in anticipation. It might be worth having Nick come in or whoever come in and just give us an update as to, what we're getting for our $500,000. So that we're not, asking the questions here.
Alicia, does this also cover, I mean, we already had, we had costs from the original treatment at the high school, right? So it's just, it was never, we weren't starting from zero, right? Is this all for the new
No,
sewer?
it was somewhere in the $100,000 range.
Yeah, right,
And
yeah.
I don't know whether it was 120 or whatever, but it was,
Yeah.
it was, certainly less than what it is now.
Oh, for
And
yeah.
we added a building with the library, but we didn't add any more people using it. So it can't be much in the way of flow difference. So I don't know, but
Yeah, and Fred, I just want to confirm it wasn't a $500,000, $500,000 increase for the
I just
net
wanted
new
to show you,
plus the other
yeah.
stuff that was somewhere.
yeah,
So
no, that's
Thanks.
fine. I'm not.
you're,
not
Fred's
trying to-
right, because it was 141. It was 141, 550. Then it went to 246, then 361. As you can see, it's
Oh, it's up 50% a year.
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
climbing.
Okay.
So we're jumping another
So the
110,000.
360 you're saying is going to be more like 480.
So
That's
that's what I was trying, I was guesstimating.
Okay.
Yeah, just to be, because I don't know what it's going to be yet. So I'm just waiting on Littleton Electric Light and Water to give me that actual number. So I bumped it up a bit as I looked back at the way it's been growing.
Right. But whoever's our liaison to the relevant folks, it would be great to find out what the $500,000 is for.
Yeah, I am. I'll reach out to them. The last several select board meetings that we've been done jointly have conflicted with their meetings, so I haven't been in a little bit, but I'll reach out tomorrow and get some information.
Okay, cool. Yeah. $500,000, that's real money.
Yeah. For the DPW, part-time seasonal, we reduced it. DPW overtime slightly, we level funded, and we eliminated that new position in highway by 50,000. I already went over that one. In roadway, we level funded. Parks, temporary seasonal wages, we took it down slightly for the small wage adjustment, and staff wages, we eliminated the new position proposed in parks as well by 50,000. Neshoba, we reduced it by 15,000 to reflect the anticipated Board of Health fiscal year 24 assessment. The nursing professional services, we increased it. The Board of Health proposed agent, we have been unable to fill. We decided to cut that funding. The staff wages, we cut that funding to return to the Neshoba nursing. And overtime, we cut that out.
So then the net of all that is about a savings of,
112,440 versus paying, I don't know what this has. I'm sorry, take that out. 30, we have 35 here for the health assessment plus the 15. So 50,000 versus 112,40, 440.
Can I ask the question on the parks? The wages that are proposed to be cut there. I was just wondering because the sailboats was something from the capital project that was recommended to do, and I realized that was because that was a revenue draw. But then would they maybe need positions to run that program for that revenue draw?
Well, that would come out of the Parks, Recreation, Community Education Fund, more so than it would come out of the parks for the DPW.
Oh, I'm sorry, right.
is Park and Rec an enterprise fund now, or is it?
There's still an enterprise, so at special town meeting, what I'm gonna do is at fall town meeting, we had voted to use free cash for the amount they had left in retained earnings, and then we're gonna rescind the fund. But Alicia is having a hard time tracking it in the general fund because she has so many different lines.
Right.
So at special town meeting, I'm gonna rescind the free cash and instead program that she can use the rest of her retained earnings and also rescind back that enterprise and close it to the general fund effective June 30th. And the Parks and Recreation Board voted in favor of that as well.
Okay, so in the 2024 budget, they'll revert back to what they did before.
Yep, there'll be Alicia, Tim, and their admin will be 50% funded general fund. Everything else will be in the new revolving fund.
Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Library, we cut the trust materials line because that should come out of the trust fund. It doesn't need to be budgeted in the general fund.
Yep.
For the Parks and Recreation, Community Education staff wages, we cut the 60,583 back down to 30,792 because it was 50-50 funded the year before. They asked for it to be 100% general fund. We said, no, please keep it at the 50-50 level. We reduced the utilities by 11,000 to 25,000 based on the spending trends they've been using for the watering of the parks. Property and liability insurance, we brought that down by 70,000 based on our discussions with the Maya representative. Hopefully, we can bring it down a little more. Depends on, I mean, this is their conservative estimate as of right now, but we'll find out further on in the spring. Public buildings, the facility admin wages, we cut the part-time admin that we were going to give to the facilities manager.
Alicia,
Yep.
so you had mentioned for Park and Rec, sorry, my brain's moving slow, their cost for watering. So is this split? Do some of the utility costs hit Park and Rec for watering and others hit the school department, or is everything at Park and Rec? Yeah, as we're talking about putting in these wells and things, like where are we going to see
Right.
budget offset, the town budget or the schools?
You're going to see it for right now. You're going to see on the town side for
Okay.
the locations that were identified by the DPW. The Park and Rec, it still has their own utilities and school still has their own utilities. But I know one was the common was one, and I think it was Copperfield. I'd have to look it back up. The DPW.
Yeah, I may have blown the ocean a little bit, but I mean, I know the schools was talking about, their utility bills for watering and things being unexpectedly high. That's, that's part of why they were excited about the watering as well. And and with Park and Rec managing those fields, I guess it's a little blurry to me on where those costs actually hit.
Right. And I know they also do some stuff with the beach. I'd have to ask Alicia to get more specifics on this. But I know that's her, that's not the schools.
Okay, yeah, I know it'd just be good to know where those costs are being recovered as we're trying to track, return on investment, I guess, over time.
Okay. Okay, put that note down. Slightly increase the electricity rates. Nick said at least 10% to estimate for that. Public building maintenance service, I increased that by 30,000 due to actual spending. We're seeing an upward tick. The schools brought their funding down to 6%, a reduction of 1.4% of what they had originally asked for. Benefits, 16,000 based on actual spending for unemployment, medical. I reduced this based on the elimination of the new positions. And retirement, I reduced this based on the offsets. So the interim treasurer sat with me and showed me the different offset items from the town total that gets offset from LELWD, Tigers Den, LCTV. Are transferred to the OPEB trust funds per our financial policy. I brought that up to 1.87. And debt went down by 9,000 by rescinding the ambulance borrowing because we were able to fund that out of the revolving and some free cash. Capital was offsets from free cash. In addition to our fiscal policy adjustment, we were able to reduce our total expenditure adjustments.
Excuse me, Alicia, do we go back to OPEB? We've been funding OPEB somewhat aggressively.
Yes.
Do we have a number that, or a feel for how much we're saving in the long term? My sense is that by paying it down at a somewhat accelerated rate,
Yes.
you end up really getting it back over the next, I don't know, 5, 8, 10 years. And I didn't know if, the finance team keeps track of.
We do. I can provide that to you after, Fred. We asked for a report. So what I've done is I've asked them each year to request it instead of waiting for us to ask them to give us the impact of that extra payment. I've asked them to please run that each year for us so we can know by the actuary how that's affecting us.
Right. No, I think that's good information for us to have. So if we're asked questions about it, then we say, it's worth this much, or it's the last time I looked at it was probably 4 years ago, and it was a significant number that we were saving over time. So I assume it's better now because you've continued to fund it. But
correct. And
I would like to see that. Yep.
Correct. So we're about 78% funded, I believe, was the last time when we looked. And a lot of towns aren't even started to fund it. In addition, we're kind of behind on our pension where we'd like to be. So what I've done is I've shifted gears a little bit more towards funding a little bit more to the pension in addition to the OPEB. So we're still giving more to OPEB, but we're giving a little more to pension so we can see some more savings.
Okay. Well, again, if you can, give an update on those two, that'd be, I think, really good. Thank you.
Yeah, geez, it's very encouraging to hear that we're at 78% funding. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of towns that are at 7 or 8%.
Correct. We're actually ahead of the game. I think they said when the auditors came out and did their presentation that 80% are nowhere near where we are of the municipalities in the state.
But I think the message to the public is it's not just a nice thing to do. It really will save you a lot of money going forward.
Correct.
It's like the AAA bond rating, being able to borrow money at a significantly lower rate from a lousy bond rating. So those kinds of things I think are important for people to understand.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. let's go back down. So we showed our offsets from free cash, our fiscal policy adjustment, our revenue adjustments. I slightly upticked investment income. They've been doing really great this year in comparison to last year. So I increased that, and motor vehicle, and even at 204,725, that's still being conservative. Then at the end, I kind of show you the 24 to the 23, but I want to say, even though this shows the 6.48%, this 14,704,696 does not include what got voted at special town meeting. So the real budget number, when I booked that, the town's real increase is 0.72%. So that's not really shown here when you look at this 14, because it's not showing the assistant planner, it's not showing the positions that were voted, it's not showing the adjustments due to the salary and comp table. That's not reflected. So I really wanted to.
Well, on the other hand, sort of the flip side of that comment is the items that went through in the special in the fall basically jumped the line for next year's budget.
Right.
So, while I appreciate your comment, but on the other hand, we've already slid almost 5% more spending in because of the actions we took in the fall.
Correct. But I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that.
We already ate that up.
Right.
So, I find it difficult to take credit for not very much of an increase when we sort of jumped the whole budgeting process by allowing those items to go through in the fall.
Correct. So we're trying to let people know not to, unless they absolutely need to. At
Right.
fall special town meeting, it's not like another bite at the apple to adjust the budget. It's for really what you really need.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, Fred, I think in hindsight, it was kind of, I mean, we went through the budget last year, right? And I feel like we as a board and the select board as well, we all kind of left the door a little bit half open to revisit things based on, fiscal conditions during the year. I think that confused the process, right? So I for sure would advocate for making decisions at the regular town meeting and not having kind of the tentative list to revisit, at a special, right? That led to a lot of confusion last year for sure. And the effect is what we're seeing now, right? With the, cutting the line. I guess there's definitely a good way to explain it, right?
Right. Back in the old days, special was really just for special and for unforeseen and emergencies. And I understand these are crazy times,
Yeah.
but in the fullness of time, it'd be great to get back a little bit more in that direction.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it was definitely the review. With us trying to figure out how to, what the impact of stimulus was going to be in the sewer and everything else, right? It was a very, very odd, different year last year. But I think we underestimated the complexity of what was going to come in at fall town meeting and how difficult it was going to make it this cycle.
Yep.
Awesome. Any other questions for Alicia on that?
No, I'll say thank you. Amazing job. I meant to shout out earlier, you got in some of our insurance lines to go down, and that's unheard of. So way to go, you.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I honestly didn't. I expected last night and tonight's conversation to be very different. I didn't expect it to be balanced as we went into this week, right? So I think part of the reason we posted, kind of 2 days in a row. So appreciate all you did, all you and Anthony did to get there, right? I mean, clearly there's still a lot of tough conversations to be had around the departments if I didn't get what they wanted, or there'll be the inevitable things that come up that are going to lead to us having to revisit this over the course of the next few months. But
Yeah, it was an incredible team effort. Ryan, Steve, Anthony, and the department heads that were willing to take these and work with us and try to help us. So,
but I do think it's important for the members of the finance committee to meet with their assigned departments prior to the various meetings that we have coming up in the next month or month and a half. Because just to better understand the department's feeling on, you know, how this whole thing came about and how committed they are to making these cuts work. So I think it's still a worthwhile effort for us to go through. And I think, you know, we should, you know, vote to do that, and make sure we pass it on to Al and Tom that they're expected to meet with their departments as well before the 17th and 17th, 23rd, and then the 6th, I guess. So it's just my two
no,
cents. I think.
Yeah, Fred, no, thanks for bringing that up. That was on my list to make sure we hit before the end of this meeting, so I appreciate that. I've only sat down with one department so far, right? But I mean, you know, Alicia with Park and Rec, since Tom wasn't able to get in there, you know, I mean, she definitely appreciated that reach out. So 100% we should take and do that and make sure they're, you know, they know we're still here as a resource, or we're here as a resource. It makes Super Saturday and those next two joint meetings for the select board a whole lot easier if we understand it.
Right.
You know, I think we lose out on some of the, you know, with the new budget process, as much as it's quicker to get through, and you know, the town administrator does a great job and Alicia of a lot of that initial uplift. I still miss those conversations we used to have with all departments. So I think we at least need to make sure we're doing that one-on-one.
Right. And I mean, statutorily, we are basically empowered to make the recommendation on Article 4 to the town meeting. So I think, you know, rather than just rubber stamping it, we should at least dig in with the departments and be comfortable with what we're bringing forward. So I don't see any reason why it should change a whole lot, but there may be some things that, you know, we want to recommend that get shifted around. But I don't see a whole lot, but I just want to make sure that we go through the process. Because in our form of government, we have a strong town meeting, a weak board of selectmen, and basically a weak finance committee. But it's statutorily, it's the finance committee's recommendation that goes to town meeting. So, you know, we should know enough about what we're recommending to feel good about it. That's all.
I'm wondering if we want to do a check-in to see where we're at, since a couple of members haven't been able to attend for a little bit. It might make sense, you know, in a week or so to see what meetings haven't been, you know, scheduled, so we can fill in any gaps.
Yeah, right. Sorry, Fred, go ahead.
Do we have a meeting schedule other than the one that we voted to support this?
Our next, if we get back on cycle, our next meeting should be the 10th, I believe, right? So this was an off week, so we should have one on the 27th and then the 10th. So we're gonna have to add one in January, Fred, but you know, we can kind of do that status check on the 10th prior to going into the two joint meetings of the select board on the 17th and 24th.
Okay, so I guess what I'd say then is, I mean, the meetings that we're talking about, like, I'm going to go talk to police, fire, and the other one that I'm totally blanking on. But I mean, those aren't need to be scheduled, you know, posted meetings. Those are just meetings with schedules. So I guess what I'm saying is, right, on the 10th, I think we should all be prepared to report back and say, yep, I've had the meetings I'm supposed to have, or they're, you know, on the calendar.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, and we can post it on our agenda to kind of review status of the departmental reach out, right?
Yeah.
If history's any guide, I mean, yeah, I know, over the last few years with my assignments, we've had, some departments that were interested in those meetings and some that declined it and kind of waited for, kind of the right meetings that we had on Tuesday nights, right? So it was a bit of a mixed bag in the past,
Sure.
but at least
Is there a different night of the week that could work for Al and Tom better than the Tuesdays?
I don't,
and I don't know what our figure is, but I had hardly seen those two in our meetings. So.
Yeah. Fred, I'll ask. I mean, Tom, I obviously see quite a bit because he's close to me, right? But he's just been really busy with work. I'm not sure that it's a night conflict versus just generally busy. And Alvin, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I will. I'll try and get an answer to that. But,
Okay.
clearly it's tough when we're bordering on not having a quorum for every meeting, right? With Steve having to step away. I mean, we've had a couple where we've either haven't had a quorum or we've been late for it or really struggling for it. So I don't want the four of us to always feel like, if we have a conflict that comes up, we derail the process, right? Because that's a tough spot to be in for all of us.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd love us to keep it on Tuesday because I have another group that I got them to switch their alternate week meetings from Tuesdays to Wednesdays.
And that's fine. If this works best for everybody, I'm fine. But just trying to get participation.
Sure. Of course.
Yep.
Okay. So
All right.
the next likely meeting will be the 10th.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Right. But I think it's not. I'm going to go to the select board meeting on the 9th just because. Who knows?
Right. I'll send out. I mean, I'll send out assignments, the assignment list again to everyone, and kind of set the expectation. Let's see. Do we have any other questions for Alicia on the budget, or can we move on to our next agenda item? All right. Public input. Seeing no public, we'll move past public input. Member updates. Fred?
Nope.
Jerry?
No.
Brian?
Nothing new.
Oh, one aside, nothing to do with Fincom, but I did send the scholarship announcement through Steve Venuti to the library. So it'll be in the library newsletter that goes out in January. And also asked Steve to send it to John Harrington and Charlie Ellis for the tech and the high school. This is the Kimball Morrison Scholarship that the trust funds fund every year. That's an aside from what we're doing. So sorry about that.
Yeah. No, it's all. Thanks for the update, Fred. I'm intentionally not commenting to avoid any conflict of not being posted with two of us being on there. So, and I don't have any member updates for this meeting. Although again, I'll call out that if anyone's interested in TAP, right, we still have our second position for TAP that's open, and so if anyone has interest in transportation, that's an additional opportunity to serve. Well, we can still. Did everyone look at Marilyn's minutes that she emailed out? We can still approve those even though she's not here. Give me a second. I can pull up the date for that. Let's see. She sent out minutes for 12/6. Yeah, minutes from 12/6. The folks have had a chance to review that, I would love to get a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the minutes from December 6th.
Great.
Second.
Okay. Okay. All in favor? Fred?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
I'm a yes as well. Motion carries unanimously. And with that, we are at our favorite moment of the night. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Can I get a second? Thanks. Sorry. All right. All in
Usually
favor?
jump in there, but I decided to let
Yeah.
Jerry have the honors.
There you go.
Thank you.
Jerry,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Fred.
Absolutely.
All right. And I am in favor as well. So with that, thank you all for spending time with us the last two nights. Alicia, thanks as always, and Amber. And